Welcome to another Keelhauled podcast. I'm your host, CaptainLogun, and we've got a lot of Sea of Thieves news to cover today, so tie yourselves to the mast and hold fast. Ahoy there, pirates. I hope you had yourselves a good week and a good weekend. I know I did. This week, we're going to be talking about the weekly dev update video, the lore Q&A, and my thoughts, my 2 cents on Duke the Dark Lord. All that and more on this week's episode of Keelhauled Podcast. First up on today's docket, let's talk quickly about the weekly dev update video. Now, this dev update video came out a day later than we normally anticipate. Typically, it comes out on Wednesdays, but this week it got in on Thursday, and it was pretty short. There was not a whole lot to it, but I did want to mention it because there's some good information, especially regarding the Black Powder Stashes event that is going till the 14th. Now, it is currently the 5th today that this episode's coming out on, so you just have 9 days to get the remainder of the Black Powder Stashes completed. Now, what does that entail? Well, you have to get 3 of the Reaper runs in for the east and west voyages. You need to turn in at least 20 gunpowder barrels to each of the different trade companies, as well as the equivalent of gems as well to them. The best bet for that, if you're trying to get this done quickly, go out, get the barrels from empty what am I trying to say? Empty forts. Try and go to forts that are not occupied by the Skull Cloud at the moment. Grab as many barrels as you can. You can typically get somewhere between, I'd say, 6 to 8 per fort, and that can help quickly get those turn-ins for those. With gems, I would definitely recommend keeping an eye out on islands as you're sailing around, but if you happen to kill Megs, I've noticed that a large amount of the gems that I've gotten throughout this event have been coming from killing Megalodons. So try to get those Megs down. It's going to help, especially if you're Pirate Legend, to kill those for the different commendations for the Pirate Legend reputation. The information that we got with the weekly dev update video basically covers that with each of these different monthly updates, they're going to start being a lot better about explaining what is going to be considered time limited versus what's going to be persisting beyond the month update. And that's really good to know, because a lot of people have missed out on stuff because they thought that it would persist past beyond the actual release period. So each of these events, as mentioned, is going to be a month long, which is nice because it gives you a chance to kind of whittle away at it like I have been doing over the last month, so that I can kind of focus on staying up to date with other games or try out different things. Or I may have been watching a lot of ghost YouTube videos on YouTube recently. I'm a little ashamed to say I've probably been watching about 6 hours worth today, but I found a really good playlist. It was really, really scary. Anyway, moving into what's going to be considered time limited. So obviously, commendations for the Black Powder Stashes are going to be time limited, and you can only achieve the voyage related ones during the time that Black Powder Stashes is available. As such, the cosmetics for that will also be removed after the update has switched over to Dark Relics. So if you're looking to get those Reaper cosmetics, the Scorpion figurehead, as well as the Reaper sails and flag, make sure that you are working on getting those as soon as possible before the update closes. It's not too hard to actually do. In fact, I've been doing some of them with folks from the Keelhauled Discord, but the other ones that I've completed have actually been done just by kind of keeping my distance from people and from storms, because obviously with mega kegs, it doesn't matter where you put it. If it goes off, it's going to sink your ship. So just be aware, be wise, be safe. That's all I got. That's basically it. Anyway, moving into what you should be doing with the barrels. Make sure that you get those turned in, because once this update ends, you will not be able to turn in gunpowder barrels or crates to, or actually, I don't think you can turn the crates into anyone right now. I think it's just gems, and I think it's just barrels. That being said, you can still turn the gems into any of the trade companies. That's always been the case. They've always been a very neutral type of turn-in to gain reputation with any faction that you want. But the barrels themselves will not be able to be turned into any of the trade companies, just the Merchant Alliance. That being said, I would like to know if we can still find barrels to dig up, because with this event, we've been able to dig up mega kegs as well as regular barrels and a lot of crates, which is kind of an interesting idea of how they go about expanding some of the Merchant Alliance reputation. As such, right now we have cargo runs and we have animal farming, for lack of a better term. And with this change, I wouldn't be surprised if we could get X marks the spot maps that pertain to stashes of supplies for the Merchant Alliance. So essentially, instead of going to the Merchant Alliance and picking up a cargo or picking up a crate, or a shopping list, I guess we'll call it a shopping list. Blackheart will appreciate that. And instead of getting one of those two types of quests, you could actually get an X marks the spot type of voyage, and then you just go out, similar to how we're doing it right now. You dig up the X's, you find different things, and then you take those to the merchant voyage. It would kind of cross that line between what's fun about gold hoarders while still being relevant to Merchant Alliance, and I think they could do some work there to kind of make that happen. We wanted different ways to get bait, and they put in the game that you could dig up bait. So I mean, if we all agree that this would be a new route for us to get Merchant Alliance reputation, while if I'm being perfectly honest, doing Merchant Alliance rep is actually not that bad. I know a lot of people don't like it. They don't think it's fun. They don't think it's interesting. And I think that's because it's the most removed from what is considered quintessentially a pirate thing to do. It is very much a thing that a proper regular ship, under like an HMS or a USS would do, something that's under a government sanctioned or a company given command to go out and get these things and trade them and use them for cargo and whatnot. If all that made sense, great, because I'm not sure that I actually truly understood what I just said. But that's why I record it, because then I can just listen back and be like, oh yeah, that was pretty smart. He's a smart guy there. Not really. We'll go on. With the premium ship cosmetics, Joe talked about microtransactions, and this is something that's going to be kind of a hotbed for conversation as we lead into the future of what Sea of Thieves means when it comes to parting with our money. Rare's going to actually start asking us for microtransaction payments if we want cosmetics, and to really kind of emphasize what the goal of the microtransactions are going to be. They say that the microtransactions that they're going to be doing for cosmetic related things that pertain to like rare intellectual property. So like I mentioned last week, definitely could see us getting some Conker's Bad Fur Day. I was passing a photo between me and Zup, who's crew of the Erie. And we were thinking that Conker's Bad Fur Day would be great because there's an image of the game over with Conker wrapped up. He's bound by a rope, and it would look hilarious if it looked like he was tied to the front of a mast, or not a mast, the bowsprit. And so that's kind of what we were expecting. I guess that some people were concerned that Rare wouldn't be putting out more cosmetics, and you would only get new cosmetics through microtransactions, which I don't know who got that idea. If you got that idea, if you seriously actually did think, and I'm not saying that what you thought isn't valid, because they didn't really explain like how that related into normal cosmetics, but if you did think that, please let me know, because I'd love to know how you kind of came around to that feeling. But I was always under the impression that what we were going to be getting for microtransactions is kind of the long game for what Rare was planning to do with cosmetics that would normally be made available available through conventions, through cons, through gaming events. Everything that we've had up until now has all been associated with either a special event that they put into the game that was only available for a month and you had to buy it, and if you missed out on it, you missed out on it because you didn't play the game during that time, or you just didn't know that it was limited. And everything else was everything else, I should say, the Huntress and the Spinal figureheads were all just available through codes from San Diego Comic-Con and New York Comic-Con. So with microtransactions coming into the game, this is going to afford us the opportunity to be able to get these codes in a way that's a lot more direct and quicker than having to purchase something through Rare Store during a certain weekend to get a code while we wait for our stuff to get shipped overseas from the current, or from the store that was handling all the merchandise. And I'd much rather have that, to be perfectly honest. I think it's a lot more of a streamlined means of giving us the content that we want at an agreed term for digital goods. And I would much rather know exactly how much I'm paying for something and knowing exactly what I want to get and being able to pick and choose, like, is this something that I necessarily need? And just to reiterate, I really do want to see some good charity cosmetics come to the microtransaction world for Sea of Thieves. We've had some good people come out and say that the special effect group that they've already done work with Rare in the past would be a great opportunity for us to support getting differently abled gamers an opportunity to play Sea of Thieves and be pirates and have fun in our world if they aren't already. And also things like breast cancer awareness or cancer awareness in general. Another suggestion was climate change and getting more funds to research to be able to help improve our world, to make sure that while we're hanging out in a really cool kind of isolated world experience in Sea of Thieves, that we aren't totally neglecting our world and making sure that we're taking care of the environment as well. Plenty of different causes out there. I could go on about taking care of animals and homeless pets as well as people. Tons of different disaster relief things that we could do. There's so many causes out there that could definitely be benefited from us taking part in special events where Rare is offering certain cosmetics to help support charities or causes, things like that, to kind of help enrich the world while being selfish with our cosmetics at the same time. I'm definitely down for it. That being said, and I know I say that a lot, but to get back to the point that I was making, the normal cosmetics aren't going anywhere. You don't have to worry about us not getting new types of cosmetics, because rest assured, Rare has tons of different ideas of different things that could be coming to the game, and as such they want to make sure that stuff is put into the game so that we can enjoy it. They love drawing up different cosmetic styles and types, and they want to make sure that people are enjoying that as well too. So if they do it and they lock it behind tall tales and achieving those, I'm even more for it, because then it shows that the people that have those cosmetics have put in the effort to actually complete the required commendations to get those cosmetics. But at the same time, I also want just the straight, flat, spend your gold, get the gold out of the economy, and well, it's not even an economy because it's all personal cosmetics and stuff. So there's not like we're trading money for anything in the game. We're not trading goods for anything. So everyone's personal amount of gold is all independent compared to the rest of the pirates in the world. So I'm trying super hard right now. I'm trying really, really hard. I don't want to dive into that rabbit hole of talking about how to get gold out of the Sea of Thieves world in exchange for session-based resources to try and make sure that pirates aren't sitting with millions of gold and nothing to spend it on. I'm fighting that right now, but I kind of summarized it in case you missed out on last week's episode. And really, that was about it as far as the developer update goes. They talked a little bit about Twitch rivals. I don't want to get into that too much because we kind of already know what was going on. It was a great chance for us to see some high caliber play from some great teams out in the Twitch world, and they're going to keep working on Arena. It's going to take a lot of time. It took a year for Sea of Thieves to get to a point where they feel like they've got a great balance between PvP and PvE in adventure, as well as some good lore and some good diversity, as well as far as emergent threats and quest opportunities for you to kind of go out and try out different things or decide how you want to play the game or what you want to do in the world. So I think it's time. I'm gonna start off in the lore. Let's go to lore Q&A. All right, pirates. So next up on today's docket, let's talk about the live Q&A for lore that we got with Andy Preston, who is the senior video game designer at Rare. Works with his wife to help make sure that the game's design for what we do in the world gets fleshed out and then worked on, as well as Mike Chapman, who is basically the head honcho when it comes to what the world of Sea of Thieves is going to turn into. He is the design director, so everything kind of comes from him. He is the person who says it all, and then we get to experience it as such. If you don't know who these folks are, they are the ones that are making our game the world that it is. And they sat down for just an hour. We only got one full hour of Mike Chapman and Andy Preston asking us answering the questions that we posed on the forum thread. So I woke up early. I usually sleep past the time that this would have been going on. I woke up and I sat down, typed out a bunch of the questions that I've been thinking about over the last few days out of my notebook, posted those all onto the forums, and they were subsequently answered. And I wanted to dive into some of the questions that were asked, as well as the stuff that I got to see. And it's actually really kind of cool. It's really kind of interesting. So I'm going to read through these, and then I'm going to record them so that you get a clean read of them, as opposed to me stumbling over words or grammar. So Lethality 1 asks in the forums, it would be cool if the Tall Tales books could show somewhere on our ship once completed, on a bookshelf maybe. Further, the system could automatically show the combined list of completed books for everyone in the crew, and you can vote on them from there as a bonus. Any chance of something like this? Mike responds, love this idea, something we've discussed extensively, but we'd lose the specific cutscenes that happen at NPCs. However, for completionists, to show you've mastered the tales, it's a nice idea. Muse on the forums asks, do you think we'll be seeing a short Tall Tales series for Pirate Legends, maybe based on the crew of the Athena's fortune? It would be a great way for players to be able to earn the ghostly eyes curse of the mysterious strangers. P.S. As a composer myself, I could hear the influence from the Shawshank Redemption end credits theme in the Shores of Gold becalmed arrangement. Very charming. Robin Beanland is brilliant. So Andy responds to this and says, would love to build some Tall Tales exclusively for Pirate Legends. Would be very cool to build something custom for our most engaged players. Also love the idea of building a curse around the mysterious stranger's eyes, something I myself am actually very interested in. Marius asks, will we see more curses, specifically unlockable cosmetics for our pets, including pet curses in the future? Can't wait for the next Tall Tale. Can we get an idea of when the next Tall Tale will be released, and will they become more consistently released like the Bildrat monthly adventures are rolling out now? Thank you and keep up the amazing work. Mike responds, yes. The curses that were delivered as part of the Shores of Gold is just the start. While we have some new stories that we're excited to tell, a lot of the work we're doing at the moment is trying to ensure that we can make them a regular thing for players. Lots of opportunities for episodic storytelling. Thor Von Blitz Blitz asks, did you folks ever play with the idea of a giant boulder a la Raiders of the Lost Ark chasing you down a pathway on Tribute Peak? And if yes, why did you ultimately discard the idea? How many more unrealized trap concepts are still out there? What crazy ideas did the team come up with? And Andy responds, this idea is cool. We didn't specifically have the boulder chasing you, but we did play with the idea of a large boulder dropping from the ceiling of some rooms. And this is just me kind of saying aside, this seems very much like the Goonies scene as they're walking through and hitting triggers, and some of the big boulders were dropping down, and I think that was how one of them might have actually gotten Chester Copperpot. Can't quite remember. Getting back to Andy's response, we also had prototypes of tripwires and some other traps as part of development, and have some new ideas for future traps and mechanisms that we're very excited about, both as part of new Tall Tales, but also to enrich the emergent sandbox further. Just to kind of reflect on this was a great question by Thor, so thank you, Thor, for putting this out there. I love the idea of getting traps in the world that aren't beholden to Tall Tales, something that is just something in the world that can happen, and there's a chance, an RNG, if you will, based around the idea that sometimes you'll walk through an area that you've walked through multiple times, and if you touch something or you pick up a chest that's been sitting on a stone trigger for a while, then very similar to what he's talking about, where a giant boulder falls down and starts rolling towards you, you actually activate the trap by trying to take the treasure, and you'll never know what the treasure is or if it's a trap, and it's not until you actually grab that treasure that you realize that you're actually setting off a booby trap. Next, I'm going to cover some of the questions that I put in at first that were then answered. So keep in mind, I asked a few questions all in one block, and Mike actually goes through those one by one to help kind of answer them. So the first one being, others are starting to finally believe that Duke is the Dark Lord. Have I been right all this time? Is Duke the Dark Lord? Mike writes back, hi, Captain. I can confirm that Duke is not a Dark Lord. Winking smiley face. However, Duke's story has a story to tell in the future. I'm going to cover this in a later section in this episode, because I have some interesting thoughts about Duke, and there's some stuff that was pointed out to me that I then did some digging, and I asked on Twitter, got some interesting answers, and I want to talk a little bit about the future of Duke. But as far as Mike is saying, he's not he's confirming that Duke is not a Dark Lord yet. Well, he doesn't say yet. I say yet. If anyone that watched Star Wars knows, Darth Vader didn't start out Darth Vader. Darth Vader started out as Anakin. We got some weird prequels that the millennials like and I don't. And then we got Darth Vader out of Rogue One, which was the coolest one. I knew, God. I told myself I wasn't going to get into this in one of the other podcasts, didn't I? I said I wasn't going to talk about this. I ended up doing it. I'm leaving it in. I recorded too much already. You're just going to have to live with my decisions. If you stop listening to this podcast, tell me, because that's if that was the breaking point, I have to know. Anyway, Duke is not currently a Dark Lord. Currently a Dark Lord. Yeah. One of the other questions I asked was, I'm rereading the same thing. Can you lay out the timeline for when Tales from the Sea of Thieves, which is the first book they released at launch, Athena's Fortune, which they released in October after launch, and the comics, which they released later throughout the year, in relation to current Sea of Thieves? Mike responds, generally the events of Athena's Fortune are 35 years in the past, and the events of the Sea of Thieves comics are 10 years in the past, obviously before DeMarco and Lassetti founded the Sea Dogs. So that kind of gives us an idea for at least two of those things. We don't know about the Tales from the Sea of Thieves, so we don't actually know how old Bell and Nura are. We don't know how old Flameheart is, if he was close to being an adult or not, or how much in the past it was in comparison to Athena's Fortune, it's a very interesting thing for him to leave out. And I think that's because we might be getting more information about that sooner rather than later in the game. But keep in mind, all the stuff that happened in Athena's Fortune, that was 35 years ago. All the stuff that happened in the comics about DeMarco and Lassetti getting the quests to go seek out their father's fortune in the Sea of Thieves, 10 years ago. And it's been 10 years since those comics before they founded the Sea Dogs. And what happens in between then is interesting, because they've been kind of at each other's throats their whole lives. They've always been rivals, and for them to come together to found the Sea Dogs is interesting, especially given some of the NPCs in the Sea Dogs who seem to be harboring some animosity towards them. If you guys haven't gotten a chance to go out to the Sea Dog Tavern, there's a couple photo or paintings out there with Lassetti and DeMarco, and there's some daggers in them, and there's a woman who's not very content with the current leadership of the Sea Dogs. Someone who I think we might be actually getting some more lore about, or maybe becoming a bigger part of the Sea of Thieves lore in the future. More on that when it becomes more relevant. I don't know a whole lot, but I know she's going to be important. So moving on, let's say it. So my next question was, when can we expect the official release for the Trading Company comics? Mike says there's no plans currently to release the Trading Company comics, but would like to, as well as new related stories. So based on that, from what I can gather, is the Trading Company comic that is currently available through Comixology and Amazon, something that I don't think is supposed to be out, but for some reason Amazon keeps flubbing this up, and we keep seeing it show up, is not intended to be out yet. And the full line of Trading Company comics, which I imagine there's probably going to be at least 3, because we have 3 trading companies, will come out when they have new related stories. And what that means to me is when there's something in the game that makes it relevant for us to know more about the history of how those trading companies came into being. Which is interesting, because it was about a year ago that they announced that. It was at the end of at New York Comic Con 2018, at the end of August, that they mentioned that they were doing comics based on the origination for the trading company, the trade companies. And I think that was, yeah. So moving on. I wanted to know. I wanted to ask, so I asked. In Sea of Thieves, there is no mention of the Pirate Lord's real name. There's not. I don't think I've ever seen anywhere in the game that has ever stated that the Pirate Lord is Ramses. We've seen paintings of him in the Sea Dog Tavern through Arena, where he is normal, and you can understand that there's a relation there. But if you haven't read Athena's Fortune, you don't know that. As far as we know, DeMarco and Lassetti don't know about their father in game, or him becoming the pirate legend Ghost. Do they know about their father, or are they unaware of the pirate legend Tavern? So Mike responds, DeMarco and Lassetti are aware of their father as a ghost and know of Athena's Fortune Tavern. He doesn't expound upon this. He doesn't go into any other detail about how they know, when they found out, what brought them to Sea of Thieves aside from their father's will, or have they actually gone to visit their father. We don't know if they're pirate legend. We don't know if they've been into the tavern to see him at all. And I really want to see where their story ends up, because it's such a weird thing. It's such a weird thing that they were he went back 35 years ago. He went back. He had kids. 10 years ago, they found out about the will, and they went to go search for their father's treasure. Fast forward, they found the Sea Dogs and make it to the Sea of Thieves. Don't know if they've ever decided to go visit their father. Too busy being competitive. Super weird to me. Moving on to my next question that I had for them. In Sea of Thieves, no. Gosh, I keep doing this. Now that we have working hatches on the brigantine and sloop, can we get working doors on the galleons? If you know, the captain's cabin has 2 doors. Neither of them work. I would just love for them to be able to work, so you can actually lock up the captain's cabin. So you could have a captain in his cabin and be like, no, I'm just going to sit in here and work on stuff. I don't know what, but I'm going to do something in here. And if you need me, you knock, or you ring that bell. I think that'd be really cool. So Mike responds, doors are a little more complex, but we have had them in the Sea of Thieves prototype early in development and want to bring them to the game. Would be great to slam the door in a crewmate's face. And yeah, I think that's great. Also, we found out that the Silverblade cosmetics that are available from the Insiders program are actually Captain Flameheart's ship cosmetics. He says, yes, the Silverblade is the same design as the one featured in Tales from the Sea of Thieves. So I think that's kind of cool. When it dawned on me a while back that the Silverblade is the same name of cosmetics as the ship that Flameheart sails in Tales of Sea of Thieves, which if you haven't read that, it's a very interesting read. I think it's going to be super relevant in the next few months as we kind of get closer and closer to revealing what the next bit of story or lore is going to be. Now that we've already done now that we've done the Gold Hoarder, I want to see what we're going to do next. And Flameheart has always been one of those teasers. We don't know when he's coming, but I imagine that if you're interested to learn more about him, that either let me know and I'll see if I can summarize the Tale of Sea of Thieves in an episode, or grab the book and read through it. It's a really interesting thing. So that did it for my first round of questions, and it's kind of funny because Mike ends the response with, "Come on, Captain, make me sweat." At which point I was triggered. I was super triggered. I was like, how dare he? Those are good questions. You want hard questions, Mike Chapman? I'll give you hard questions. And I started clacking away at my keyboard, and I had my cats bring in. They walked in with torches in their mouth, and I was like, no, it's okay. We're not going to England just yet. And they're like, okay, meow, and they walked off, and they put the torches back in the closet because you got to keep things clean around the apartment. So I decided to dig up and go into some other some really, really good questions that I was hoping to get answered. I posted them. They didn't answer them. I tagged them on Twitter, and then Mike spent another 2 hours actually going through all of the questions on the rest of the forum and answering them as much as possible. So I went in, and I'm going to go ahead and read you off the questions and answers that I posed to Mike. That was done after the actual event was done. And I just want to say thanks, Mike, if you're listening. I really did appreciate that you took the time to actually kind of respond to these, because I really love that that you're that dedicated to making sure that you're giving us as much information about the game as you feel worthy. So I responded back. I said, since you answered the softball questions, just wondering when we'll get to dive, quote unquote, into Bell and Nura's story, and how long will it be before we understand more about their connection to the Sea of the Damned, as well as their connection to the Ferryman? Mike responds, would like to explore more of Bell and Nura's story, as well as the Sea of the Damned all up. There's a flow of a wider story we want to tell, with tiny hints in monthly activities right now. Obviously, future Tall Tales will flesh this out further. Thank you, Mike. Thank you. I can't wait for the Sea of the Damned stuff. I know that there's been conversations around having curses to turn into ghosts and undead, and I can't wait for that kind of stuff to find out how that works out, to find out why Belle is now looks undead based on the statue that you guys have of her. Moving into, where is Stitcher Jim, and has he decided to side with Captain Flameheart Jr. after finding out what's in the box of wondrous secrets and realizing that Captain Flameheart is a better quote-unquote boss to follow than Wrathbone, the Gold Hoarder? Mike responds, regarding Stitcher Jim, I hear a bunch of the ragtag pirates defeated the Gold Hoarder. Clearly, nothing comes of greed. But beyond this, what could truly change Stitcher's heart? All I can say is that his allegiance has changed. So that right there tells me all I need to know. We'll see Stitcher Jim again. We don't know when. We don't know in what capacity. He could be undead. He could be normal. But he has definitely changed who he's following. He disappeared shortly after Forsaken Shores, and we haven't heard tale of him. And he didn't show up when we laid siege to Tribute Peak to hunt down the Gold Hoarder and claim his skull for our own. So expect to see him soon. The next question I had is the box of wondrous secrets being sent to Captain Flameheart, and who is his keeper? Will we ever find out more about his father who adopted him? Now, if you haven't read Tales of the Sea of Thieves, that's kind of a big, like, what are you talking about? Well, in the book, it talks about Captain Flameheart's father, who had the same name, Flameheart, which would make Captain Flameheart Jr., kind of Indiana Jones. And with that, we don't know who his actual parents were, because in the book it explains that Captain Flameheart Sr. is dead and that Captain Flameheart Jr. is adopted. So we do know that thanks to the alphabet, the small bit of alphabet that we get from the Tall Tale 8 with Revenge of the Morning Star, that there are ruins in the game that mean different things. And using that kind of Rosetta Stone, it's been translated and pointed out, especially by Falcor, that the box of wondrous secrets has the words to Captain to Flameheart. And that is definitely kind of like a postage box, or an envelope saying, hey, this is the Flameheart. We don't know what's in it, but whatever's in it is definitely something that kind of made Stitcher Jim's personality change. The next question I asked, I didn't actually expect an answer to, but what I got is something that I'm actually still pretty comfortable with. I asked Mike how far out before we get a new area in the Sea of Thieves. The area to the south has been in the Shroud for some time, and we don't have a solid idea of where the wreck of the Silver Blade is. And what I'm referencing deals with the Tale of Sea of Thieves book. We know that Captain Flameheart's ship sank and that there was a cursed chest, which is what incentivized Belle and Nura to go find. And we know that Wanda the Warsmith, or Captain Warsmith, went out and found the cannon, or a cannon from the Silver Blade, and used that to try and smelt the metal down to make the cursed cannonballs, or at least use the energy or the magic from that to make the cursed cannonballs. And because of that, I know that there are people in the game that have, well, not necessarily all in the game, but some of the people in the game know where the wreck is, possibly even Salty. And the area to the south has been kind of cordoned off for now. It's a different area compared to where the Devil's Roar is. And we know now that the top right corner is reserved for Tribute Peak, something that is still shrouded, literally, from the rest of Sea of Thieves, and that the bottom area is completely undeveloped, or at least as far as we know. It could very well be developed, but we just don't know what's down there because we don't have a safe means of traveling to it. So that's kind of the emphasis or the origin of that question. And Mike responds that new areas would be awesome and would like to do more than just expanding out again. Nothing to confirm though. It takes a lot of time and would like to do more with the gameplay rather than just change the look of islands. So what he's saying here is they're looking at doing something similar to the way they developed the Devil's Roar. The Devil's Roar is not just another set of islands, but it's a carefully designed environment that is balanced based around volcanoes as well as geysers and water. And there were some criticisms with the Forsaken Shores. We didn't have actual lava flows. We had just kind of hot areas. We didn't have new types of enemies in that area, like, molten lava or magma skeletons to deal with, coated in hot lava, things like that. And to hear him say that they want to do something that's more special, that's something that's more interesting than just changing the look of islands. So it's not just like a frozen wastes area, or it's not just a marshy swamp area, is kind of fitting for what I would expect for them to do. They've got a good foundation with the 3 Cs, and they've kind of built and expanded upon that to make a harder area like the Forsaken Shores. And as such, the next area, if we're going to be given another set of islands, should be something that really kind of takes advantage of the tools that we have now, the mechanics that we have now, and having islands that have already like traps built into them, varying types of voyages built into them, new interesting dangers as far as like AI threats on them, new interactions with areas that we can go into. There's teases about using rowboats to get into different areas and kind of building worlds or environments that allow you to really have to use a rowboat to get in and out of areas because it's not safe to bring a ship in. Things like that. I really can't stress just how much happier I am knowing that the next area we get will really kind of take that into consideration. So I'm okay for now with that. The next question that I had, will that area be tied to merfolk in a future content patch? And if so, what are the real purposes for the mer people statues that Duke the Dark Lord has us destroying for gems? Mike says that merfolk will be explored and the mermaid statues explained. So much more than meets the eye. Just to set expectations though, this is for the future, not this year. And that's kind of really an interesting thought, that what they have planned for us right now is so much further than what we currently think that they're working on. Like I imagine right now they're probably about 6 months out. So this is August. I imagine that they probably got up to about February worked out. And that content is currently being made for stuff around September, October, and November. And that as August comes out and September comes out, we'll probably start to hear more about some of the bigger things that are going to be coming in the Sea of Thieves world, revolving whatever they're doing on the island, the Uncharted island with the digging. So with Dark Relics, we'll probably find out there's more stuff to come with the lore. As they said, that they're going to be expanding upon storytelling through these monthly updates. There is a lot of other stuff that was in the Q&A. I'm going to put a link in there. I'm going to take a quick second, give you a little break. I'm going to dig in, see if I can find anything that would be worth mentioning outside of the stuff that I asked and other people asked, to see if there's something that you guys would appreciate. All right, so I did find one other question. This one actually comes to us from Zupski from the Keelhauled Discord. You can talk with him if you have any follow-up questions for him. He writes in and says, "Ahoy, Mike and Andy. Thanks for taking time out of your day to talk with us. A couple questions regarding Revenge of the Morningstar and the future of Sea of Thieves. It was hinted by eavesdropping Skelly conversations that the Chalice of Resurrection is the same chalice that Captain Flameheart found in the lore book. Now, after we've defeated Grey Morrow, we sort of left the chalice and Captain Douglas's skull as we ran off with a piece of the Shroud Breaker. Will leaving those items behind come back into play in the future? And also, will we learn more about Captain Douglas and his glorious skull and why Grey Morrow wanted to resurrect him? And finally, Grey Morrow never dropped his skull. He could still be out there, right?" So Mike responds and says, "So Captain Douglas is a character in the Athena's Fortune novel," something I actually forgot, "that while still human was affected by a quote-unquote encrusting curse. Many decades later, you obviously see him with the crystal growths on his skull. Something that I hope we see skeletons have in the future. And I just lost my spot. The Chalice of Resurrection belongs to Grey Morrow, and he uses it to draw his forces to him by resurrecting the dormant ones that have previously died but can be brought back. Both Douglas and the Chalice could be seen again. At the very least, you'll learn more about Grey Morrow in the future." And I thought this was pretty interesting because with the Chalice of Resurrection, we now have two different things in the world that revolve around reversion or reverting or using powers to bring people two different states of life and death. We know that Briggsy was wanting to be turned back to a human. She didn't want to be a skeleton lord. She never asked for this. And we know that Greymorrow is willing to resurrect and enslave other captains so that he can have an army of undead. I'm really interested to know if we're going to have any kind of redemption stories for skeleton lords to turn back into their humans, or if that's even a possibility. And I also want to see Greymorrow come back with a fleet to take us on, something that is kind of like the emergent ships in the world. And by the way, according to the Q&A, that skeleton ships will now are going to be coming back in the world that are emergent. And the question that was brought to us was Micro666, who asked if skelly sloops would be a thing in the world, not just limited to the ship battle clouds, which I 100% agree with. I'm looking forward to the day where we'll actually get to see some skelly sloops out on the seas, so that it's not always just the big bolster galleons out there that are tricking us into thinking that there's a bunch of galleons on the server. There were some interesting things that I had asked Mike about, and wanted to know more if it was going to be possible. And one of the questions in the Q&A actually asked something about this, and it was I love the Micro asked again, I love the Ferryman's lantern in Tale 8. Would love to see this used in the future for quote-unquote discovering hidden items out in the world, secret stashes, or something even better. To which Andy responds with a winky face. This was something that I posed to Mike as an idea, just to kind of throw out into the ether, so that could be something we could talk about in the future. And my idea revolved around the lantern that we have being a way to kind of take a look into the past in the Sea of Thieves. So if you've done the Tall Tales, that you know that there's the tale with Briggsy, and you see the crayon drawings in the book as she pierces a kraken against the rocks of crooked masts, and you see the skeleton with the ship at crooked masts, and you actually see that event happened in the game. And I was thinking it would be really kind of cool if we had the opportunity to take the Ferryman's lantern, which we don't get to keep, out to those areas and raise them up and actually look and see, like, oh man, this is the events that unfolded when this actually happened. Like, this was the moment where these creatures died. So you could actually see, like, the ship crashing into the body of a kraken and seeing it against the rocks. Couldn't you imagine the body of the kraken smashed up against the rocks, pierced by a ship? It would look great knowing what the body of the kraken would look like against rocks, with the ship piercing it as Briggsy reigned victorious, killing the body of a kraken. And other things too. You know, like having the opportunity to see skeleton captains as you're fighting them, to raise up the lantern and see them like in their normal pirate looking face. You know, like we all look like pirates. We're all just living pirates, but we don't look like skeletons unless we have that weird bug, which I still think is a really funny bug. But to be able to raise up a lantern as you're fighting a skeleton captain and see what that pirate looked like in that moment, it would just look really creepy. It'd be like skeleton, lift up the lantern, crazy looking pirate, and each of the pirates could have, you know, a set of different looks to them, because right now they have their clothing, but the clothing is unique to them. And it just kind of depends on which ones spawn. Hashtag hunt CaptainLogun. And, you know, to be able to use a lantern from the ferryman to see what old pirates or undead pirates used to look like would be kind of a cool idea. I don't know if that's in the books. I don't know if that's something that's even feasible. Something like doors on a galleon working, it's just a matter of like, is that going to be something that actually works in the game? And if so, how are they going to manage to fit it in with all the other stuff that they have planned? That's going to do it for the Q&A, because this episode's already going pretty long. There was a lot, and I know you lore hounds really love this stuff, and it was a lot to kind of digest. That was kind of the stuff that I wanted to talk about. There's a lot of other stuffs as far as like, are we getting more shanties? Will we be able to get banjos? Are we planning on having more trips back to the shores of gold, so that we're doing different stuff there? What happened to Gloria, the mysterious stranger, or what happened to Yura on the North Sea star post after Suds replaced her? Things like that are all things that were simple answers. That was like, they'll be back, they're happy, they're alive, they were eaten by a shark. No, we won't be. We'd love to. Those are kind of the typical short answers that they gave for a lot of the different stuff. With that, I think I've got one first mate's log that I'm going to cover. Let me double check that. If you don't hear it, don't hate me, but let me double check. All right, pirates. So you're never going to believe this, but this part of the podcast is actually being recorded after I'm done with the podcast. So if it feels kind of hard, just like injected right into the middle of something, and it doesn't make sense why I'm talking about this instead of the first mate's log, it's because I totally forgot to talk about Duke. I got done with all the Q&A, and then I was excited, and I looked at the time, and I was like, oh my god, I talked so much about Q&A. I need to talk about the first mate's log and get you guys out of here. And then I realized I hadn't even talked about Duke the Dark Lord. So getting into what I wanted to talk about, the whole stuff that I was thinking about with Duke, actually kind of ties into something that was answered in the Q&A earlier this week. And there's been a couple of videos out by the content creators that Falcor's done, that the Crow's Nest has done, talking about who Duke is and why we should be skeptical of him. Now, I've been skeptical of this dude for a long time, ever since he's like, hey, go destroy statues. And I'm like, why? And he's like, for gold. And I'm like, okay. And, I've started calling him the Dark Lord. And Mike has said that he's not a Dark Lord, but I argue that he could still be in the future. We just don't know. Everyone has turning points. But for right now, he's helping us in a way. Well, he's got an interesting story so far, and there's a lot to his history that we don't know. And one of the things that I wanted to kind of touch on is who Duke, the soon-to-be Dark Lord, is. And the reason I bring this up is kind of because I can't do YouTube videos, but also because I think that there's going to be a lot more about him that we haven't heard of yet. So in the game, he's always been the bilge rat adventures guy. He's always been part of the bilge rats, even though there's only one bilge rat. And he says that he wants to put the bilge rats on the map, that he wants to gain favor with the trade companies. So I was writing this up as I was kind of thinking about it. And the thing that I wanted to talk about is that Duke the Dark Lord used to be a weapons merchant. And the way that you can tell this is because of a tattoo that he has down on his lower belly, where I think your appendix is supposed to be. And he's recently been looking to gain favor with the trade companies. He wants to make the bilge rats a thing. And if given the chance, I'm wondering if the bilge rats will become their own vendor. And not to say that this is something where they're going to be like a vendor on top of the Order of Souls building. I think that's kind of reserved right now for the Pirate Emporium, where we're going to be able to buy microtransactions. But we still don't know what's in the second level to the tavern. And he seems to like the tavern. So I'm wondering if maybe at some point we'll actually see what's in the second story to the tavern, because the stairs have always just been broken. But maybe the stairs get fixed in all of the taverns and that becomes an opened up area. Who knows? But we already have a weapons shop. And why would a former weapons merchant want to make want to make the bilge rats a thing? Well, my theory has to do with his past. And I asked Mike about this casually, just didn't really mention it or where I came up with the idea or how I thought about this. But I asked him, what kind of weapons did Duke make? So he responded on Twitter, and he said that there was the Bilge Buster grenade and a Radistar, which Mike, if you're listening, dude, you got to explain that, because I did some digging and I can't find anything. I don't understand what a Radistar is, other than like a ninja star, but shaped like a rat. But the thing that kind of had me ties into the podcast episode that Falcor and I did the other day, where we had kind of come up with an idea for like a skull grenade or a coconut grenade, and for Duke to build something called a bilge buster grenade. Now keep in mind, anything that Mike usually says is part joking but part canon. You know, he comes up with everything as far as like stuff that's in lore, and what he says is kind of like canon. So when he says like the bilge buster grenade, I take him for his word and think that, okay, well, at some point Duke made hand grenades somehow, and I think that would be really kind of cool if we started to get some different types of weapons. Now they've said that they're interested in getting different types of weapons in the game at some point, but they've also said that they want new ammo types. And that's kind of where I'm leaning. That's kind of where I'm thinking, like, well, what would Duke make? He's already given us ship cosmetics for the Bilge Rat updates, but he used to be a weapons maker. And for someone that makes weapons, it doesn't seem like he would really want to give that up. That's kind of his forte. So I think that at some point, we're going to see Duke offer us different ammo types. And the reason I think that is because the last time we had a weapons merchant go astray and leave their shop was Wanda. That's right. Captain Warsmith used to be a weapons merchant, much like Salty. And with Wanda, she made the cursed cannonballs, which is a different ammo type for the game. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe that same drive, that same passion is something that Duke would have. He always wants to be out there. He always wants to go out there and explore, you know, get some scars, all the kind of one-liners that he tosses at you while he sends you out on these dangerous voyages. I think he's going to be the go-to person when it comes to getting different ammo types. Now, I don't know what ammo types we could be talking about here. If we're talking like actual shots for your pistol, if you could get like a specific type of ammo that fills your gun with 5 specific shots of a type of ammo, or maybe it's different cannonballs. I have no clue. I really don't. But it would make sense, because one of the things that we learned about tattoos is they tend to be pretty significant in Sea of Thieves. They tell tales of what you've done in the game, and a lot of people are very particular about the type of tattoo set that they wear. And we also know that from Stitcher Jim and the gold hoarder that is posted out on Morrow's Outpost, that Stitcher Jim used to be a gold hoarder. Now, obviously, if you've read the Athena's Fortune, you know that he was in league with Rathbone, and who became the gold hoarder. So obviously, him having the tattoo of a gold hoarder makes sense. But it's still one of those things where I think, okay, well, all the gold hoarders have tattoos to indicate what trade faction they are. And I wonder if the merchants have the same things, because if you go to any of the weapons merchants and you look at the apron, and then you take a look at the actual tattoo that's on Duke's belly, they're the same image. Now, obviously, Duke's is covered up a little bit by his vest, but it is definitely clear that that is the same exact tattoo. And I went back and I took a look at some of the old photos that I've taken of Duke, and while not all of them have shown his tattoo down there, because they've been covered, the ones that showed them were definitely dating as far back as at least December, when I was able to find the Yule log video that I did with him in front of the fireplace. He actually had that tattoo. So this isn't something recent. This is definitely something that's been in the lore for a while, that he is a former weapons merchant gone bilge rat, and that he wants to make the next bilge rat company a big deal in Sea of Thieves. And what better way to do that than offer something that no one else has? Types of ammo. What do you think? Am I way off base? Is it strange that we're going after dark relics in the next update? Who knows? We'll have to find out. But for me personally, it's going to be really hard to trust Duke until I see some concrete evidence that he has my best interests at heart. And if he keeps sending me out to destroy things or get destroyed, I'm going to have a little bit harder time believing him. So now, let's actually get on to the First Mate's log. All right, pirates. Wow, that was a lot of lore Q&A. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope there was a lot of information, but we're not quite done. I've got a couple other things I want to tell you about, and that kind of deals with the community because, as we all know, this game is all about us, the community, and making this game what it is. So I got a couple First Mates logs in. Actually, I got a lot of First Mates logs in at the Discord server. You too can join us on the Discord server. Links are always in the show notes, as well as my personal Twitter profile. You can always join up, ask me for a link. I can get you information about how to join up. If you're not familiar with Discord, it's just a chat place. It's just a forum for us to sit down. We've got tons of different channels for people to chat with about Sea of Thieves, about different games, about consoles, real life, just to have fun, just to have a good place to hang out. It's kind of like having your own private pirate clubhouse, and we just sit around and gab about the game and hang out and join up and do parties. I'm going way too long with this stuff. I should just stop. Why haven't I? I'm stopping. Okay. Neptune writes in to the Sea of Thieves Keelhauled First Mates log. He says, well, been trying to introduce the wife to Sea of Thieves. We were just island hopping, looking for random things and letting her fight skeletons to learn the game. Found a map with 6 chests down in the Devil's Roar. Thought I'd take her just for a look before we log off since she hadn't seen that part of the map. Well, spent nearly an hour digging them up, dealing with skeletons and geysers with no food, only to leave and meet a megalodon. Well, didn't end so well, with the meg sending me flying and her trying to deal with a chest of sorrows and the megalodon for her first time. Neptune, thank you for sharing that story. I am really hoping that didn't scar her to the point where she didn't want to touch the game again. Hopefully it was exciting and scary at the same time, and it sounded like a lot of fun. I love every once in a while I'll be playing, and for some reason it's always during a Kraken. My wife will come in and I'll be like, look, it's a Kraken. She's like, oh cool, is that the game? I'm like, yeah, it's the game. What else do I play? And it's nice, but she has no interest, so I kind of have to live with that. And then Zack Attack reached out to me this last week, and he actually, he wanted to join the Discord. He wanted to share his First Mates log, just like I said you guys should do. You should join the First Mates log. It's really fun. So he wrote in, and I have to give him credit for actually taking the time to actually do this. So he wrote and he says, "Ahoy, CaptainLogun. I've got a First Mate's tale that's bound to hit ye in your OG pirate feels. A fortnight ago, me and a pal ventured out on the West Black Powder Reaper voyage, which inevitably pit us against a rival ship at Kraken's watchtower. One particular time, after being killed and sunk, we sailed back to spot a sloop and a galleon in close combat as a meg circled the pair, wanting to join the action. Once we had finally managed to tap all of the boom boxes on Watchtower, we headed over to Sailor's Knot Stronghold and faced a similarly intense circumstance. I was having difficulty finding the last keg when me mate Ryan reported that the enemy galleon was fast approaching. I finally got the bloody barrel, and as the others came ashore to take on the fort, so there were gunshots and blasts going off around me as I was digging up the stronghold barrel and hightailing it out to there with the cash in my Reaper's sails. These 2 instances in our voyage had me reminiscing over the early days of the Sea of Thieves, when the Hungering Deep was brand new and skull forts were still a rarity in the realm. Ryan is a fairly new player, so he couldn't have been aware of what I was feeling. But for a day one black dog like old swashbumbling Bill Oh God, the name. Do you have a funny pirate name? For if you have a funny pirate name, you got to tell me what your funny pirate name is. For a day one black sea dog like old swashbumbling Bill Slank. It was an experience the likes of which I'll not forget for quite a while. Zack Attack, thank you for that story. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you had that feeling of dealing with multiple ships, going after the same kind of treasure, the same kind of loot, and really having to knuckle down and hold fast and stick your ground and fight the good fight and get your treasure so you can get that reward and make it worth it. Because, man, the victory smile that you have after some of those fights is so worth it. It's so amazing to get those experiences, and I'm glad you had one of those opportunities. My adventures on the Sea of Thieves have definitely been pretty exciting. I've had a really good time doing forts and doing runs with different people, as well as working on tall tales. I had a sloop sneak up on me the other day and almost get me, but they oh man, they was good too. They snuck aboard and they pulled their ship around. They had to have been on Cannon Cove before I actually got there, because I sailed up to Cannon Cove, and just as I was getting ready to set foot on the island to finish up a tall tale for the Revenge of the Morning Star, I noticed a sloop out of the corner of my vision. I saw them coming around the island, and I was like, oh man, all right, I'm gonna have to deal with this. They had the Jolly Roger flying, and I knew what their intentions were. What I didn't know is that there was a man with a chest of sorrows swimming up to my ship behind me. So as I'm laying shots into the sloop as they're sailing around, they're hitting me as well. I start getting hit from behind by a dull blade, and it hurts me just enough to the point where I kind of realize what's going on. I get my wits about me, and I pull out my saber and I start to block and parry as best I can. I jump down below deck and I grab some bananas and I shove them in my face as fast as I can. I'm just shoving them down my face, in my mouth. It's making a mess. I probably look like a child with a bunch of food on my fingers and on my mouth. It's a mess. And I get above deck and I pull out my flintlock pistol and I fire a shot and I miss one, and he fires one and he misses, and we get into a sword duel on the top deck, and we're trying to stay on top of this canopy as I'm trying to get away from him. I manage to cut the dog down, and as I send him to the ferry, I raise the anchor, drop the sail, and start sailing off towards Sanctuary Outpost. And I start to go below deck to kind of deal with some of the repairs, because I've already dropped a couple cannon shots with some curse balls into the other sloop. So I know the other sloop, they got hit with a peace ball, they can't fire, and I hit them with a anchor ball, so they couldn't go anywhere, and they had to recoup. Plus the shots that I got in normally meant that they had to repair and bilge as well too. So as I'm sailing off, I'm completely blind from where I'm going. I just know I'm heading out west, and I know Sanctuary Outpost is out west. So as I'm bilging and I'm hitting holes with wood planks to try and seal up what damage I've taken, I notice that down next to the clothing chest, getting all of my clothes completely soaked, is a curse chest crying its eyes out, just completely blubbering. And I thought, man, had I not been the pirate that I am, those dogs could have sunk me quickly. Not only were they laying shots into my ship, but they anchored me, and they managed to kill me once, and they managed to get me get a chest of sorrows aboard. And I'm so thankful that I was able to kill that guy, get aboard, and get going so that I could actually go. So I sailed out to Sanctuary Outpost after I got everything repaired, and I sold that chest. And then I tried to engage with them again because they killed my skeleton, but they didn't know where to dig up the skull, and they fled. They ran pretty fast. And after that, I realized that there was no way I was going to be able to find out where they killed that captain, so I had to go restart my tall tale, and that was kind of a bummer. But I ended up finishing the last of the tall tales, Revenge of the Morning Star, after that. And man, that was a good fight. They almost had me, but not quite. And today was the last day that they ever regret coming across CaptainLogun. Pirates, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed it so much. I hope you had a good time, and this gets you through the rest of the week as you work on those black powder sail or voyages. God, I can't. You can tell it's the end of the episode because I can't talk anymore. But basically, I just wanted to say thank you, because I love you, pirates. You mean so much to me, and all the support that you give me. I love seeing it on Twitter. I love seeing you talk in the Discord and get into groups and get stuff done, doing loot stacking like Mina Ferry, so that she can help get people in the Discord up to Pirate Legend. And I want you to help me get this out to other people. If you could help me get this out to other people, I would be so grateful. So do me a favor, if you have time, if you have access, go on to iTunes, leave a review, an honest review. It will help the algorithm get it out to there. Go on to YouTube, find my channel, find Captain Logun's, find the Keelhauled episode, hit the like button, hit the subscribe if that's how you like to actually listen to the podcast. Go on to Spotify, listen to it through Spotify, share it with a friend. I have merchandise now. It's got the Keelhauled logo on it, and I'm looking to make sure that people have access to like mugs and phone cases, t-shirts. I sent out one as a contest reward for the person that found my Easter egg. They found it and I sent them out, so I'm hoping they got it and everything worked out great and they like it. And yeah, that's if you want to get a hold of me, there's plenty of ways to do it. As always, you can always hit me up on Twitter at CAPT_LOGUN. You can always reach me in the Keelhauled podcast Discord. There's links in the show notes as well. My gamer tag is CAPTAINLOGUN, and you can always send me an email with your story or your feedback or your thoughts on anything that I talked about today at CAPTLOGUN@gmail.com. Pirates, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you, I love you, and I look forward to sailing with you on the Sea of Thieves.